Before we dive in, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more real-life courtroom twists like this one. It was a crisp May morning in Washington, D.C., and inside the U.S. Supreme Court, you could feel the tension thick in the air. Marble floors gleamed under the dim lights. The scent of old oak benches lingered. Every seat was filled. At the bench sat Justice Amy Coney Barrett, early 50s, in full black robe, stern expression, hair pinned neatly, eyes sharp and steady. "Ms. Leavitt, your remarks are bordering on contempt," she snapped, placing her pen down with a cold clack. A soft gasp rippled through the courtroom. One attorney leaned over and whispered, "This just got intense." Across from her stood Karoline Leavitt, 27 years old, navy blue dress, composed yet defiant. A young White House press secretary who didn't flinch. She held a slim folder in one hand, her gaze fixed on Barrett. "Justice Barrett, I'm exercising my constitutional right to speak," she said calmly, her tone unshaken. Barrett frowned. "This is dangerously close to undermining the integrity of this court," she said, looking toward the crowd for support. Silence fell again. Karoline took a small step forward. "With your permission, Your Honor, I'd like to show you something," she said, unfolding her file. The moment felt electric. Barrett's brows twitched. Someone in the back murmured, "Wait, is she about to flip the whole room?" Because what Karoline was about to reveal might not just change the court. It might change the conversation about justice itself. A hush settled over the courtroom like a heavy fog. Karoline Leavitt stood tall, her voice steady but her eyes burning with clarity. "Justice Barrett," she began, opening her folder slowly, "this is a Supreme Court ruling from 2020. She stepped forward, holding up the paper like a shield. "You signed this ruling yourself." Barrett's eyes narrowed. The room stiffened. "This ruling explicitly protects speech, even when it criticizes the court," Karoline continued. "Under the First Amendment." A law student in the back clutched his notebook, whispering, "Is this really happening?" Karoline's tone didn't waver. "Dissent is not disrespect. It is democracy." She placed the ruling gently on the bench. Justice Barrett picked it up with a trembling hand. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. The courtroom lights glinted off her glasses as she scanned the familiar words she herself had once penned. A journalist leaned over her camera, whispering, "She's speechless." Karoline continued, firm but respectful. "This moment isn't about me. It's about the people's right to understand and question power." From the gallery, someone clapped, soft but growing. Another followed. Soon, the courtroom echoed with a wave of applause. Barrett looked up, stunned. "Ms. Leavitt," she finally said, voice low, "this is compelling." And just like that, the tide had shifted. But what had Karoline truly done? Defended herself, or cracked the very walls of silence around the court? You could feel the air shift. Justice Amy Coney Barrett sat still, the ruling Karoline had presented resting gently on her desk. Her fingers traced its edge. Her jaw loosened. "Ms. Leavitt," she began, her voice softer now, "it appears I may have acted too swiftly." Gasps whispered through the chamber. Karoline offered a slight smile, respectful but not submissive. "No apology necessary, Your Honor," she replied. "We all want the same thing, justice that serves the people." Barrett looked up, locking eyes with the young woman before her. There was no defiance in Karoline's stance now, just honesty. A father in the gallery turned to his teenage daughter. "You're witnessing something real," he murmured. Barrett reached for her pen, thoughtful. "Then tell me, what do you suggest?" Karoline stepped forward without hesitation. "Let's launch a national initiative, one that helps everyday citizens understand how this court works." She paused, then added, "Let's call it Justice Transparency." The room was still for a heartbeat, and then applause erupted, loud, unrestrained. Phones came out. X, formerly Twitter, flooded instantly. "Karoline and Barrett are changing the game." "This isn't politics. This is leadership." Justice Barrett stood, just slightly, her posture no longer towering, but aligned. "I'm in," she said simply, turning to the crowd. Karoline nodded. Justice is strongest when it's shared. And in that moment, a courtroom became a catalyst. But was it just an agreement, or the first spark of a deeper transformation? Weeks passed. But what started inside a courtroom had now spilled into the streets. Across Washington, D.C., posters with the words Justice, Transparency filled coffee shop windows, college bulletin boards, and subway walls. At a downtown civic center, hundreds gathered. Blue banners waved in the spring breeze. Voices rose together. Justice belongs to the people. Make the courts make sense! Karoline Leavitt, white blouse, sleeves rolled, coffee in hand, stood at the podium with no teleprompter, no notes, just purpose. This wouldn't be happening without Justice Barrett, she said, scanning the crowd. Change only works when those with power listen. From the back row, a college freshman held up a law textbook and shouted, "I'm applying to law school because of you!" Applause followed. Videos went viral. Karoline inspires a generation. Justice transparency is real. Later that week, Justice Barrett appeared in a quiet interview. No robe, just a gray jacket and clear eyes. Karoline reminded me what this robe is for, she said into the mic. Not to silence, but to serve. Screens across the country lit up with side-by-side clips of the two women, one from the bench, one from the streets, united in message. This movement isn't about blame, Karoline said during a live stream. It's about building something new. But behind the screens, one question echoed louder than any headline. Can truth and transparency really rebuild trust? Or is the system too far gone?
Months later, the Justice Transparency Initiative was no longer just trending. It had become a national force. Courthouses across the country hosted open forums. Judges gave public Q&As. Legal volunteers explained the Constitution to students and seniors alike. And on a rainy spring day in Philadelphia, an old courthouse buzzed like never before. Inside, hundreds filled the grand hall as Karoline Leavitt, blazer over a navy blouse, tablet in hand, stood next to Justice Barrett. Gray slacks, soft smile, no robe. "Karoline, this is extraordinary," Barrett said quietly, scanning the crowd. Karoline grinned. "Only because you chose to open the door." X exploded again. "Karoline and Barrett, from confrontation to reform. Justice is now a conversation." As the applause began, a teenager stood up near the back, his voice cutting through the crowd. "Justice Barrett," he shouted, holding up a flyer. "You're awesome!" Barrett laughed, really laughed, and gave a slight bow. Karoline leaned toward her mic. "That right there," she said, pointing at the boy. "That's why we're doing this." Phones flashed, hashtags flew. Even lawmakers began using the platform's open access toolkits. Behind the scenes, Barrett turned to Karoline. "This isn't just transparency," she whispered. "It's trust, reborn." Karoline nodded. "And this time, it belongs to the people." But in every revolution, one question remains. Is this just a victory, or the first chapter of something far greater? 1 year later, inside a quiet chamber of the Supreme Court, the world outside buzzed with headlines and debates. But in here, there was calm. Karoline Leavitt, now 28, thoughtful, poised, sat across from Justice Amy Coney Barrett, composed, serene, 2 mugs of coffee steaming between them. "The people trust the courts again," Karoline said softly. "It's happening." Barrett nodded, flipping through a short report. "Because you made it possible." Karoline smiled. "No, because we let the truth speak." On the polished wooden table sat a small glass sculpture, a symbol of balance and light. Karoline slid it toward Barrett. "I had this made," she said, "for everything you helped rebuild." Barrett looked down at the sculpture. A small engraving read, "Justice is clearest when seen by all." Outside the chamber, a group of high school students passed by, laughing, debating the Bill of Rights. One paused at the doorway, peeking in, then whispered to a friend, "That's her. That's Karoline Leavitt." Barrett caught it. "They're watching," she said, half smiling. Karoline nodded. "And now they understand." The 2 women sat silently for a moment. No cameras, no applause. Just legacy. But one question lingered, not on the walls of the court, but in the minds of everyone watching. What will you do to make justice clearer for the next generation? Drop your thoughts below. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe justice should belong to everyone.